It was an ordinary afternoon in Perth, with a shower running and the house enveloped in silence. A teenage son called out for his mother, but she did not respond. What he discovered behind the bathroom door was perplexing. Something was amiss, and as more details emerged, the situation grew increasingly strange and unsettling. This is the story of Colleen Rebelo, a devoted mother embarking on a new chapter in her life until everything changed abruptly. From the outside, Andre Rebelo's life in Perth appeared idyllic. He shared a modern home and a seemingly enviable lifestyle with his partner, Gracie Piscopo, and their young son. To anyone scrolling through their social media feeds, they epitomized the dream couple: stylish, successful, and living in luxury. However, behind the carefully curated images and filtered posts lay a far more intricate narrative. Andre met Gracie in 2015 when he was just 19 years old. Captivated by her charm and ambition, he quickly fell for her. Gracie, determined to make a name for herself, transitioned from working as a gym receptionist to becoming a powerful influencer, amassing a following that earned her around $170,000 a year. This newfound success allowed her to indulge in high-end fashion, extravagant vacations, and luxurious hotel stays. Andre, initially an outsider to this glamorous world, was drawn into it head first. Together they traveled, documented their experiences, and invited followers into a life filled with shopping halls, luxury vehicles, and picturesque scenes from around the globe. To their audience, their life was aspirational: a beautiful woman with a flourishing career, her supportive athletic partner by her side, and a baby that seemed to enhance their brand. They drove the latest Range Rover, lived in a spacious designer home, and were rarely seen without smiles. Yet, while Gracie's star continued to rise, Andre remained largely behind the scenes. As her fame grew, managing brand deals, campaigns, and financial decisions became overwhelming. Consequently, Andre made a significant choice. He dropped out of university to support Gracie's influencer career full-time. He became her assistant, handling contract negotiations and managing her financial portfolio, earning only $20,000 a year in the process. Although he appeared in her photos and videos, Gracie was always the focal point of their online presence. After the birth of their son, the family's image became even more polished. Their baby frequently featured in content, allowing Gracie to tap into the lucrative world of parenting endorsements. Baby products, lifestyle branding, and sponsored posts became routine. Both Andre and Gracie dedicated hours daily to curating and maintaining their digital brand. Yet Andre yearned for something of his own. He began exploring cryptocurrency, viewing it as a new frontier where he could build his own success. He remained hopeful, often telling Gracie that their investments would eventually pay off, even if the returns were not immediate. Not everyone shared his optimism. Andre's mother, Colleen, expressed concerns about his path and the growing distance between who he once was and who he was becoming in the shadow of social media fame. Colleen Rebelo, a mother of 4, valued stability and education, hoping her children would build solid, long-lasting careers. When Andre dropped out of university to manage Gracie's influencer business, Colleen was deeply worried. To her, social media was an unpredictable realm where fame could be fleeting and success often hinged on youth and appearance. She feared that time, competition, and shifting online trends would eventually push them out of the spotlight. Despite her worries, Colleen continued to support her children's choices. After her marriage ended in 2010, she raised her family alone while working as a teacher, managing to instill love, structure, and values in her children. Once they were grown, Colleen pursued her own dream, returning to school and proudly completing a degree in 2020 that would allow her to start a new career in healthcare. At 58, she was filled with hope for the future. However, on the morning of May 25, 2020, that hopeful future came to a sudden and heartbreaking halt. The day began like any other. Colleen spoke with some of her children. Her youngest son, Fabian, still lived at home, and her daughter, Monique, had temporarily moved in while completing her paramedic training. Colleen's house was conveniently located near the training facility, making the commute easier. That morning, Monique and Fabian prepared for their workday. Fabian worked part-time at a nearby supermarket and relied on Colleen to drive him in at 10 a.m. and pick him up at 2 p.m. However, when Fabian clocked out that afternoon, his mother was nowhere to be found. He called her phone 13 times, but there was no answer. Although it was only a short walk home, the silence unsettled him. Colleen had always been reliable and punctual, and something felt off. When he arrived home, everything seemed quiet. Then he heard the sound of the shower running, which provided some relief. Perhaps she had simply lost track of time. However, it was odd that she hadn't answered his calls, and now she wasn't responding to his voice. He called out to her again, but there was still no reply. Reluctantly, Fabian approached the bathroom door. It wasn't like him to invade her privacy, but the eerie silence compelled him to act. He pushed open the door, and what he found would haunt him forever. Colleen was in the shower, not standing, not moving. She was kneeling on the floor, leaning awkwardly against the tiled wall, motionless. Something was terribly wrong. Panicking, Fabian dragged her body into the center of the bathroom and quickly covered her with a towel. With trembling hands, he dialed emergency services. As he waited for paramedics to arrive, he attempted to resuscitate her. He performed CPR as best he could, but he noted something strange. Her skin was cold despite the warm shower water, and there was a bluish-gray discoloration on her face and neck that alarmed him. When the ambulance arrived, paramedics took over, but there was nothing they could do. Colleen was gone. Fabian immediately messaged his sister, Monique, urging her to return home as quickly as possible. His panic was real, and he needed someone from the family to be there with him. He also tried reaching out to his older brother, Andre, but received no response. It wasn't until Monique arrived back at the house around 3 p.m. and began calling and texting Andre herself that he finally showed up with Gracie and their young son. The atmosphere inside the home was one of disbelief and devastation. Just that morning, both Fabian and Monique had spoken to Colleen. She had been her usual self, calm, attentive, and present. There were no signs of illness, no complaints, no red flags. Now, only hours later, she was gone. An autopsy was conducted, but it offered no clarity. The cause of death remained undetermined. To her children, the notion that their healthy, active mother had died of natural causes was difficult, if not impossible, to accept. They clung to the strange details, the small inconsistencies that simply didn't add up. Colleen had always removed her gold wristwatch before showering, yet Fabian found her still wearing it. The same went for her jewelry. She never bathed with it on. Even the anti-slip mat she normally placed carefully inside the tub had been left draped over the side. These weren't random habits. They were part of her daily routine, the kind of details someone close to her would know intimately. On that day, every one of those habits had been broken. Police found no signs of forced entry. The windows and doors were locked, and nothing appeared to be missing. With no clear cause of death and no evidence of a break-in or foul play, authorities concluded that Colleen had died from natural causes. Her family was heartbroken, but left with no real answers, until a few weeks later, when everything changed. Out of the blue, the police were contacted by an insurance company. They weren't investigating the death itself, but suspected fraud. According to their internal inquiry, someone had submitted paperwork that appeared to be forged. The person they suspected? Colleen Rebelo. What followed was a staggering revelation. Just 1 week before Colleen's sudden death, Andre had taken out not one, but 3 separate life insurance policies in her name. Together, they totaled over $1 million, all of which was set to go directly to him. Not a single one of his siblings was listed as a beneficiary. Within days of Colleen's passing, Andre wasted no time contacting each insurance company to file claims. Two of the companies immediately raised red flags, rejecting the payout request due to the suspicious timing between the policy activation and Colleen's death. Only one company was still considering the claim, but they required more documentation. That's when the inconsistencies began to pile up. One of the documents Andre submitted listed the wrong date of birth for Colleen, using his own birthday instead. Other paperwork was delivered quickly, but seemed off. Medical documents appeared to be doctored. One claimed Colleen had died of a ruptured aneurysm causing a subarachnoid hemorrhage, but the information didn't match the official autopsy findings. Even more alarming was a will allegedly written and signed by Colleen that named Andre as the sole heir to her estate. No mention of her other children, no trace of fairness. It seemed unthinkable to the rest of the family. As investigators dug deeper, more fabrications surfaced. Andre had submitted falsified psychiatric evaluations to support the legitimacy of the new will. Incredibly, he had even used artificial intelligence to generate a voice recording that wouldn't sound like his own, attempting to validate the changes. To the rest of the family, it was a betrayal beyond comprehension. They hadn't just lost their mother, they had lost trust in their own brother. The most painful part was trying to make sense of it. Why would Colleen name only Andre in her will? Why leave nothing to Monique, Fabian, or Julian, the eldest son who everyone assumed would eventually oversee family matters? Colleen had always been fair. She never played favorites. Her love had been equally shared, and her children knew that, which made the entire situation feel even more unreal. Her oldest son, Julian, moved into her house to begin sorting through her affairs. It was a difficult task made heavier by grief, but he was determined to bring order to the chaos. However, when he began looking for his mother's documents, things like her driver's license and essential personal records, he discovered they were missing. Andre, his younger brother, admitted to taking them, claiming he had done so to manage the inheritance process. Then another odd discovery came to light. Andre had redirected all of Colleen's mail to his own address. The family was confused. Fabian and Monique were still living in the house, so there had been no need to forward the mail elsewhere. The decision felt deliberate, calculated. As questions surrounding Colleen's death grew, so did suspicions about Andre's intentions. Could he really have orchestrated his own mother's death for money? Police began re-interviewing not only Colleen's children, but also Andre's partner, Gracie, and others close to the family. Colleen's sister provided new and critical information. On the day of Colleen's death, around 1:30 p.m., she passed by her sister's house and noticed a car parked in the driveway that she didn't recognize. At the time, she gave it little thought, but at Colleen's funeral days later, she saw the same vehicle again, this time with Andre and Gracie getting into it. The implication was serious. Andre had been at the house much later than he claimed. Until then, none of his siblings knew he had visited their mother that day. He had never mentioned it. When questioned by police, Andre admitted that he had, in fact, been at Colleen's home on the morning of May 25th, staying for about 45 to 50 minutes. He claimed she was not in good spirits, that she was anxious about aging, and that she had brought up the idea that life might not be worth living anymore. He used this narrative to justify the insurance policies he had taken out in her name, saying she had asked him to help secure their family's financial future. However, Gracie had her own version of that day. She recalled that she and her cousin had plans for lunch and were getting ready to go out. As they waited, Gracie realized Andre was missing. He hadn't told her he was leaving, and she didn't know where he had gone. She tried calling him repeatedly, 12 times according to her phone records, but he didn't answer. Frustrated and concerned, she messaged him. Andre didn't return home until 2 p.m., behaving as if nothing had happened. Gracie was confused, but chose not to press for an explanation. Before they eventually left for lunch, she remembered one more chilling detail. Andre had messaged his mother asking if she could watch their son later that evening. Investigators found this strange, especially given what would unfold just hours later. Police, now deeply suspicious, obtained court approval to conduct covert surveillance inside Andre and Gracie's home. They installed a listening device in the bedroom and a camera in the living room. Over the course of 3 months, they monitored conversations, hoping to uncover anything that might point to the truth. From the recordings, it became clear that Gracie had no knowledge of the insurance policies. She was furious when she found out and confronted Andre. Not only was her reputation at risk, but so was her entire career. Sponsorships and brand deals could collapse if she became associated with such a scandal. In one conversation, she reminded Andre that if he had killed his mother and the truth came out, he would go to prison. Andre, however, appeared undeterred. He believed he would receive the insurance payout and had even started planning to leave the country once the money arrived. But why take such a risk? On social media, Gracie and Andre seemed to live an enviable life. Designer clothing, lavish getaways, a sleek white Range Rover, and a sprawling home. However, once investigators delved into their finances, a very different reality emerged. The house they flaunted wasn't theirs. They rented it for $880 a week. The car was financed, not owned. The vacations were often sponsored. Their glamorous lifestyle was built on appearances. In truth, they were drowning in debt. At the time of Colleen's death, the couple owed $120,000. They were months behind on rent and car payments. Gracie had an outstanding $40,000 tax bill that she didn't even know about. Andre had been managing their finances and kept her in the dark. His cryptocurrency investments, once touted as their salvation, had returned a mere $22 after 3 years. Desperate to maintain the illusion of success and escape their mounting debts, Andre began to see a darker and far more dangerous way out. By taking out 3 life insurance policies in his mother's name and positioning himself as the sole beneficiary, he devised a plan that could net him over $1 million. With that money, he could eliminate their debts and even pretend that his failed crypto venture had finally paid off. In November 2022, Andre was arrested and charged with the murder of his mother. His trial began nearly 2 years later, in October 2024, and stretched over 8 weeks. There was no definitive physical evidence tying him to the crime. In fact, the exact cause of Colleen's death had never been determined, but expert witnesses testified that it is possible to suffocate a person without leaving visible marks. Minor abrasions were later found on Colleen's arms and eyebrows, consistent with someone struggling or being restrained. One theory suggested that a pillow may have been used to smother her, but this remained unconfirmed. What emerged during the trial was a timeline that contradicted Andre's claims. His aunt had seen the car parked at Colleen's house at 1:30 p.m., long after he said he had left. During that time, he ignored multiple calls from Gracie, which was unusual for him. Investigators also discovered that after July 2020, Andre had wiped his computer clean. No records, no browser history, nothing, as if he had deliberately erased something. Then there were the insurance policies taken out just days before Colleen died and the forged documents that followed. A fake will, false medical records, an altered psychiatric report, and even an AI-generated voice recording, all designed to cover up the crime. Andre pleaded not guilty. But on December 5, 2024, after 2 days of deliberation, the jury returned a unanimous verdict. Guilty of murder. The man who once helped build a digital empire alongside his partner, who lived a life framed by filters and followers, now faced a very different reality, one stripped of all illusion. Don't miss out. Subscribe now for more thrilling investigations.